Red Rising by Pierce Brown is a sci-fi story set on Mars that deals with the premise of what were to happen if humanity were to terraform the whole solar system, as far as I understand, and including all the planets, including Mars, but also what were to happen if in this scenario we gave up democracy but instead established a color-based caste system where the color that you're assigned to essentially decides your place in society and also your role in society. So basically in this world there are a lot of different colors that work as a caste. So there are high colors like gold, who are the ruling class. Then there are like medium colors where I believe grays and some other colors where there are people who basically constitute the middle class of this society. And then there are like lower colors which includes the lowest color, which is red. And those are basically, as far as we learn in this book, people who work for the other higher colors, and they do a lot of like the laborful jobs. Like on Mars they're used to mine helium-3, which is supposed to be a very important element that basically helps humanity terraform all the different planets. In this book we follow Darrow, who is a red living on Mars. He is one of these miners that I talked about. His job is basically, he is a hell diver. He is really deep in the mines of Mars and he's mining this helium-3, and him and his family have been told by the golds and also by the higher colors that what they're doing is going to help terraform the solar system and is going to help establish a lot of human colonies on all these different planets. And yeah, that is basically where we start off. We see Darrow and we see his life on Mars and his work on Mars, and also how the golds like use the reds to basically get to this helium-3 and how they treat them. And due to some circumstances, Darrow ends up finding himself in a rebellious group, and he finds out a lot of things about the golds, about the higher colors, about the society. That's where the book really takes off, but there is a big part of this book that is set before that, so I won't talk about all of that because I think that part is really, really interesting. Personally, I really enjoyed this book, but I will have to say I do have my issues with it. So the main thing is this book starts off really, really strong. So the first 40 to 80 pages of this book are amazing. We see Darrow's life as a red on Mars. We follow him, we see his family life, we see his life at work, and we see a lot of different things, and that part is so well written. So basically I read the first 80 pages I read in one sitting. I loved that part of the story. But then we have this like middle part of this book, which is basically you can say it's a school setting where Darrow is participating in a competition, and that part takes basically up the rest of the book. And while it is interesting, I feel like it's a step down from the first 40-50 pages because it ends up being like a bit repetitive, and it feels like the stuff is happening, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of direction because it feels like the ending is quite clear where we're going. So the middle 200 pages or so of this book slow down a bit. It never gets bad, but it also never is great. Like, it's just a very average book for the middle part of this book, I would say. But then the last 100 pages or so are really good again. Those really pay off a lot of the things in the slower parts. But I feel like for the fact that the first part of this book is so good, the next 200 pages feel a bit lackluster, which is sad. Because I felt like after reading the first 80 pages, I had to slow down a lot in the middle part of this book. So as I said, I read the first 80 pages in one sitting, and I read the last 100 pages in 1 or 2 days, I believe. But the 200 pages in the middle took me a long time. That I feel like it was also related to me having a slump, but I've also talked to other people and they feel the same way, that the middle part of that book, it slows down a bit. So I would suggest, if you read this book, which I would recommend, I would suggest that you really try to push through those 200 pages in the middle to get to the end, because I feel like basically it's like part 1 and part 4 of this book are amazing, part 2 and part 3 are okay. Like, as I said, it never gets bad, but it also yeah, part 2 and 3 just aren't great. And yeah, there's a lot that happens in this book, but from what I understand, this is only a setup for the rest of the series. So this is basically a 6-book series, I believe. The 6th book is supposed to come out next year. And yeah, so there's basically the original trilogy that's supposed to be one complete story, and then yeah, the authors decided to write another trilogy in the same world, which also has some of the same characters, I believe. And yeah, so let's talk a bit about what I really liked about this book, and that is the character growth from Darrow. So I think Darrow starts off as a very, like, I don't want to say bland, because he isn't really bland, but I would say he's a very, like, I didn't like him in the beginning. I liked the side characters in the first part, but I didn't really like Darrow necessarily. There's no real reason why I didn't like him. I just didn't find him very interesting, and I felt like he didn't feel like a very cool protagonist to follow. But that really changes throughout the book. We see Darrow go through a lot of things in this book, and we see how all those things that happen to him really make him grow as a character and as a person. And towards the end of the book, I feel like Darrow's transformation is really, it's amazing, like how much he changes throughout this book. And towards the end, I really felt like I was invested in his character. And yeah, I think that's basically what this book sets out to do. Like, we start out with Darrow, who doesn't really have a lot of ambition in the start, but then we really build him up to be a person that you're really invested in. And I felt like that was done amazingly well, especially in the last part of this book. It feels like Darrow really takes some huge steps in terms of his character development. And yeah, so I think that's one of the big aspects that I feel like it really got better. Personally, I think the plot was fine. I don't think it was amazing by any means. Like, as I said, the first part of the book was really amazing, but that had a lot to do with the world building and yeah, the setting up of the characters. And the middle part also, as I said, it's quite slow. It moves, the plot moves a bit, but the plot never really felt too interesting. And towards the end, the plot really takes off, and I felt that part was really good. Character-wise, in terms of Darrow, I think it was really good. And side characters-wise, I think the side characters throughout the book are actually quite interesting. I don't think any of them feel like extraordinary in this book, except maybe one or two that I will talk about in the spoiler section. But yeah, the side characters always felt at least interesting, and there was a lot of setup that I feel like will come into play in the later books in the series. There are a few characters in this book that I feel like I really enjoy and I will continue enjoying in the future. But yeah, that remains to be seen. What I also really enjoy about this book is the whole premise of this story. So basically in this book, we only followed life on Mars, and we only follow like Darrow through like his life as a Red and then at this like competition. But we don't get to see a lot of the rest of the world and of the whole solar system. And I have been told that that changes in books 2 and 3, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to see what a lot of the other colors do, how the dynamic between the different colors are, and it will also be interesting to say how these dynamics change throughout the story, because obviously the title is Red Rising, so I think it should be clear that it's something that has to do with the rebellion. So yeah, it will be interesting to see where all that is leading. I really hope that this turns into a big space opera where we go to different planets, where we get a lot of different characters. I have a lot of hope for the second and third books, and I have only heard great stuff about those books. I will for sure continue with this series. I would recommend that you read this book. Personally, I really enjoyed it, but I know that a lot of people do not, and some people also DNF the series here. I went in knowing that I would read at least through book 2, because the people who recommended it to me, which was mainly Mike's book reviews, whose Why You Should Read Red Rising video I will link in the description down below, and I would highly recommend that you check that one out. That is really what made me want to read this series, and especially book 2. Book 2 was something that he really hyped. And also Alex Nieves, whose channel I will also link below, he also read the whole series, and he also says like 1 wasn't that great, but from 2 on it's amazing. So yeah, those two really hyped me up. So when I went into this series, I knew I would read at least through book 2, and I am planning to continue the series soon. I personally think that I enjoyed the book more than I expected, maybe because I went into it with lower expectations. but I do think that there is a lot more potential for this setting and for this set of characters that were introduced in this series, and I feel like there will be a lot more to explore in the future. So I will go into spoilers now for a while, so I would recommend, if you haven't read the book, that you read it, and yeah, that you turn off the video right now and maybe come back to watch it once you've read the book. In that case, I thank you for watching, and yeah, see you in the next one. Alright, a little bit about spoilers. So, I talked about Darrow and his character growth. So, I think Darrow in the beginning, obviously he is this we get his dynamic with Io or Ao. I said Io, I think it might be Ao though. His dynamic with Ao was quite interesting. Ao seemed to be the one that really wanted to push him to do something about their situation, but Darrow really seemed reluctant, and he seemed very unambitious, I would say. And that's really something that I personally didn't like about his character. That wasn't a great aspect to have in your protagonist, especially in a first-person narrative where it feels like, yeah, the person whose head we are in and who we are following really doesn't want to do anything. Obviously then we get the big twist with Io dying, or I know it is something that isn't that unpredictable. It's quite a common trope that the main character's loved one dies and then that sets them off. But I personally think that it was done so well in this book. I feel like the first part where all of that happens is written so well, and I was invested so quickly into the relationship between Darrow and Io. So yeah, I personally really enjoyed that, and I feel like that really propelled Darrow to really accept his role in the rebellion that he gets into later on. So I feel like that part was written very well. I talked about how I didn't like the part in the competition. I wouldn't say I didn't like it, maybe. I think it just wasn't quite as interesting as I would have hoped. After seeing the first part of the story, I thought, okay, now we can see Darrow go through this big growth immediately, and now we can see him really some amazing plot and character development immediately. But it took a while. As I said, it took 200-300 pages for him to really get going, and I think it probably makes a lot of sense, because obviously he gets transformed into a goat and then he has to basically act like a goat out of nowhere. And yeah, I think it makes sense that it took a while, but I feel like just the middle 200 pages of this book really, I wouldn't even say slowed down, because stuff was happening and there were some big revelations. We got introductions to some really cool characters like Cassius, Julian, Mustang, Severo. And yeah, I think there was a lot of cool stuff that I feel like I should be invested in at that point already, but it took me a while to get invested in those characters, and it took me a while to really care about where the plot was going, because I personally thought it felt quite clear that Darrow would win the competition. I wasn't sure towards the end, actually. Towards the end, I thought actually that Mustang might win. I never thought that there were a lot of stakes, especially for Darrow, but I feel like there is some cool stuff that happened in that part, the reveal about Titus, which made me wonder how many other Reds are in this society of the Golds. Then his fight with Cassius and their whole dynamic, I feel like it set up something very interesting. I feel like that will be something that will come into play in the future books as well. At least I think it should. There is a lot of setup there that can be used. I think also the way that his relationship with the other characters was built was done well, because I was invested in him and his relationship with Mustang, his relationship with Severo, and yeah, also with Pax, Rip Pax. So I do think that the middle 200 pages had a lot of value, but I personally just felt it took me a while to get through them. It might have been because of my reading slump. It might have been because it slows down and because I had too high expectations after the first part. But yeah, that's what I thought about that. But Part 4 is amazing. I really felt it made a big switch in Part 4. We get this big, okay, before I go into that, I have one more thing. The fact that there are 2 death fake outs for Darrow in this book is a bit weird. We have his death fake out at the end of Part 1, And then we have the death fake out at the end of part 3. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I don't mind it, I think, but I mean, it's something that it's clear that he's not going to die, I feel. Or maybe it's just because I knew he wasn't going to die, because I know that he's the main character for at least the first 3 books. Yeah, that was something that I felt like I laughed about it, and I found it quite funny that he did that twice. But yeah, I mean, that's not a big deal. It's a bit nitpicky. Let's get into part 4. So part 4, I think it was titled Reaper. That's really where we see Darrow grow. So we get this big like part where him and Mustang build their relationship, and where they start getting back into the competition, and they really start getting more people on their side, and Darrow really becomes this like lead character, or yeah, more of a leader in general. And that's really something that I personally really enjoyed. That's the part that I felt like really made me invest in Darrow. Like, it felt like, yeah, he made some mistakes in the competition. He got too cocky, he was too arrogant, and he wasn't really working with the people that were on his team. After making the mistakes, after Cassius basically kills him and then Mustang rescues him, it really feels like that is where the switch goes off, and where he starts learning, okay, I have to work with these people. The whole point of the competition is to understand how to work with people and how to make them follow you. And that's really something that I felt was done amazingly. Like in the last 100 pages, how he gets all these people on his side, how he makes Severo, Mustang, and yeah, a lot of other people really like follow his lead. How it's executed, I really liked. And also then he turns against the Proctors, and yeah, also the action scenes in the end. I think that last part was amazing. I don't know. I really read that really fast, and I felt like there was a lot of interesting stuff happening. And then we really see that Darrow is growing as a character, and then he's really becoming into this leading character. But then we get this big, like, I mean, twist. It's not really a twist, but Fitchner reveals to him that Mustang and the Jackal are actually related, that they're siblings, and that really makes Darrow question Mustang's loyalty to him. And I really enjoyed that part. Like, it really felt like, okay, despite the fact that Darrow went through this growth, it's really showed that he still didn't trust the people who were following him. It felt like something that Darrow isn't a perfect character. He believed that Mustang would betray him. Obviously that didn't end up happening, and I personally didn't think it would happen because the page count was too small, but that's, again, it's a nitpick. But yeah, that's something where I felt like, okay, there is a lot of, like, still a lot of character growth in Darrow, despite the fact that I feel like he went through a lot of growth. I think there is a lot more to be explored with his character and with his relationships with all these people that we already saw, and also his relationship with other people that we should, and I think we will see a lot more people, like this Arch-Governor. We will see him a lot more, I believe, in the next few books. And I feel like there's a lot of potential, not just for the setting, for the characters, for the plot, but for the story as a whole. I think there is a lot that I want to see, but I don't know how much can be done in 2 books, or it is 4 books now, I know. I feel like there will be a lot more that will be explored, and I hope there will be a lot more that will be explored, because I think in this setting there is a lot of potential to tell an amazing story. And yeah, I'm hyped for book 2 and also for book 3, because I heard only good stuff about those 2 books. And I also heard that these get darker as they go on, and I think I'm a big fan of dark stories. Like A Song of Ice and Fire is my favorite fantasy series. I hope that this story will lead somewhere that I will enjoy. And yeah, as I said, I already enjoyed book 1. I don't think it was anything extraordinary, but I liked it enough to continue with book 2 and 3. And yeah, I already decided before even going in that I would continue. So yeah, take that as you will. But yeah, that's all I have to say for spoilers. Yeah, if you want to talk to me about Red Rising, talk to me in the comments down below or on the Discord. The link will be in the description down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Yeah, if you enjoyed this video, I hope you will tune in to my next video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.